Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And welcome to this spooktacular episode of Friends of the Force. Be warned, there may be Force ghosts in this one.
Hey, Brad.
What?
Boo. I know. Super spooky. Super spooky.
Well, listen up, folks. Happy October. Today is October 1st that this episode is dropping. It is one of my favorite months of the year because you got Halloween, you got candy corn, you got scary movies, you got the leaves on the trees turning colors. It is a good time of the year. I love this season. Fall is my favorite season. Pumpkin spice lattes, all of it. It's all great.
I cannot relate to your enjoyment of fall. It's cold.
It is cold. It does get cold.
And I'm allergic to pumpkins. So
oof.
I don't get to enjoy that holiday or at least seasonal treat. But that's okay. That's okay. I have Lego Terrifying Tales to enjoy this season.
Yes, we absolutely can enjoy that today. And you probably have already guessed by the title of this episode, but we are talking about Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales, which is the newest special on Disney+. So Sarah, did you want to tell our folks why today's episode is even more special?
Well, first of all, Lego in the first place. And
yes,
we have been talking about enjoying Lego things, specifically the Skywalker saga, which we haven't gotten yet, essentially since the inception of our friendship. So getting to enjoy a Lego thing together is just very exciting.
It's one of the first things we talked about on your first episode on the podcast back in June 2019. We talked about Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker saga. So, you know.
Holy heck.
When it was unveiled.
Wow,
good times.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
And what makes this episode particularly exciting, aside from it just being Lego, which is one of our favorite things, is that we were invited by Lucasfilm to join one of their press day roundtables. And this one was with the Star Wars Lego Terrifying Tales director, Ken Cunnginham, and writer, David Shayne. So we joined a handful of other Star Wars news outlets and podcasts and stuff. And we all got to ask a bunch of questions, silly, serious, and spooky, and got to hear them talk about their project. And it was so much fun to not only be able to watch this special a bit early, but get to talk to them and get to enjoy in the questions of others as well. So it was a very, very cool experience. And I hope that you'll stick around after our review to listen to the entire roundtable.
The roundtable does have some light spoilers in it. So do be warned there, but we will have a full write-up, non-spoiler write-up on our blog at friendsoftheforcepod.com. So if you want another way to engage with the interview today, definitely go check that out. And we also will be reviewing it, as Sarah said up front, in a non-spoiler way to give you kind of our initial impressions of the special, like what we loved. I can't really say there's nothing that we didn't love, to be honest, because it really hit so many areas for us, checked a lot of different boxes.
Oh, yeah.
We watched this on Zoom together a couple nights ago, and like we were just dying of laughter. I think I was pretty much muted the entire time because I was like crying laughing at some points.
Brad, what you can't see in my Zoom frame is that I was spending a lot of time, like, not just laughing, but slapping my legs. Like I was like, oh my God, this is so funny as I, hit my legs.
Truly a knee slapper, this one.
But really, though. So I can't wait to get into the details of it. It was a good time. So if you are listening to this introduction so far and you haven't watched it, stop and go watch it. It's 45 minutes. Who doesn't love Lego? I can't trust you if you don't love Lego. I'm sorry.
But I have to just say, like, again, thank you to Lucasfilm. It feels so special between you and I, going back as far as we have in our friendship, talking about Lego, to have this be like our first press day together. So it's really special to me, and I'm just really happy to be talking about it. So let's get into it. So for those of you who are not familiar with Terrifying Tales, so it is the newest special. If you watched last year's Lego holiday special, kind of in the same vein as that, but this year it's all spooky, terrifying tales, various things across the entire Skywalker saga, including the prequel, original, and sequel trilogy. So this actually takes place after the rise of Skywalker. Poe and BB-8 get stranded on Mustafar, and lo and behold, they end up at Vader's castle, and they meet up with Graballa the Hutt. They meet up with Vani, who is actually a character from Rogue One. I really didn't realize this at first until I saw the picture while we were talking through on the press day interview. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy that walks in the Vader's chamber and goes like, Lord Vader, there's a guest for you. And I was like, I didn't even make the connection.
Which makes it all the funnier. It really does.
Amazing. So throughout this special, there's 3 different tales. So there is The Lost Boy, which is about how Ben Solo becomes Kylo Ren, The Dueling Monstrosities, which imagines how Darth Maul and General Grievous were born, and The Wookiee's Paw, which gives us a look at what happens if Luke Skywalker's wishes were immediately granted. So lots of fun things in this special, and let me tell you, you definitely have to watch it. But Sarah, what were your overall thoughts on Terrifying Tales?
I will say about The Wookiee's Paw, spoiler, non-spoiler alert, it doesn't go like he plans. But what were my overall thoughts? This was just a great time. I genuinely just had an excellent time watching this. The humor is so funny, so witty and zany and all over the place in terms of like dad jokes and puns and all that good stuff. If you enjoy a good pun, this is a good special for you.
Plenty of them.
I also really liked the animation and the storytelling. One thing that's really exciting about Lego animation is that it continues to get more detailed and more realistic. There are close-up shots where you see the texture of the brick, you know, like in a close-up, like on their shoulders or the textures. I was amazed. It was stunning, beautiful, excellent, love it. But also the story and how it was put together was really compelling. It kept me intrigued throughout the entire time. I don't really think there was any part of it that lagged in any sense of the word. And I had fun all the way until the end. So all in all, this was a success. I am feeling super energized by this special, and I can't wait to watch it like 4 more times this spooky season. This will be my spooky season activity. When I'm in the desiring a spook, like I turn to this because it has the perfect mix of haunts and fun and Star Wars all in the same thing.
Yeah. I think you found your new October tradition. Sounds like. There
we go. October's not my favorite month, but this is now this is now my new favorite thing.
Yeah. I think the thing that really works for me in the special is how these 3 tales eventually come to a point near the end of the special, and to see kind of what they were all building towards and what is with Vinny, who, by the way, is voiced by Tony Hale. You and I love Toy Story, especially Toy Story 4, because like Forky is like one of our favorite characters, which we got to obviously interview Stephanie Folsom last year, who wrote the movie, and like talk to her about Forky. So a lot of our interests have been intersecting around Toy Story on this podcast 2 years in a row now,
so
right?
So weird. I love it. I love that for us.
Tony Hale just absolutely nails the performance of this character. It is just so funny. I mean, there are just so many one-liners that he delivers that like have me absolutely rolling. And yeah, getting to what you were speaking to, like the animation's really good. The music in this is also amazing. Yes. There's one part during The Lost Boy where there's like a montage, and I was just I actually was like crying. I was crying laughing. I won't say why, that you're gonna have to watch for yourself to figure out why, but it was truly amazing. And it just hit every comedic beat for me. I was like nonstop laughter. And like, I wasn't necessarily like the biggest fan of the special from last year, although I think there were like a lot of high points with it. But this year's just like continue to go even above and beyond that one. And like you can really see like, I think where they're hitting their stride with these. And I'm excited. Hopefully in the future, maybe we get more of these. Like, the first one was about Rey. This one's about Poe. Maybe we'll get like a Finn one or a Rose one in the future. I have a feeling like if they continue to do this, that would be a really fun direction to go, to give us like an exploration of these characters post sequel trilogy. So, and obviously this is all like non-canon. This is really just a kind of a fun way to explore Star Wars. And sometimes we need that. We've seen that with Visions. It's like Visions is this kind of like, iterative storytelling of Star Wars that's not really adhering to anything. Likewise, Lego is kind of doing the same thing, but in like a very fun, zany way that is just like outrageous and hilarious and silly. And sometimes that's Star Wars at its best, and it definitely shows here.
Yes, I totally agree. And to give listeners an example, if they haven't watched the special yet, Garbala the Hutt is turning Darth Vader's castle into a luxury hotel, complete with gift shops. And the humor is just ridiculous, off the wall, but it's so good because it's really what I love about the Lego and the Lego humor, that goes on across the Lego properties is that it just has a lot of fun. And so there's just a lot of fun in this space of Star Wars, which can sometimes be so serious. And I'm so glad that this special was just endless fun.
Sarah, so amongst the 3 tales that we watched, do you have a favorite?
Oh boy. I like all of them for different reasons. Do I have a favorite? I'm gonna go with The Lost Boy as a Ben Solo fan. Ben Solo fans, I think, will really enjoy this one, especially the montage that Brad was talking about. Think about the meme of it all.
Yes.
Ben Solo fans love a good meme. The meme energy is strong in the montage. But there's also something great about the other 2. Like, there are very specific moments in the other 2 that are just such highlights. And I won't spoil them, but one of them is whistling and the other one involves flying. If you know the special, you know what I'm talking about, but I won't spoil it for the people who haven't seen it yet, but it's very funny. But yeah, there's not a low point. All 3 of them are really good.
Yeah. I love how The Lost Boy gives us that origin story of Kylo Ren with a little bit of a spin on it. And I have to say, like, Christian Slater playing Ren, who, this is like one of the first times we've seen a character from the comics like make it into something that's like animated or on screen, and they definitely did the character justice. He was awesome as Ren. I love how he has like kind of like the flow and everything that you see in the comic, like the mullet is still there and everything, and it's just perfect to a T. And the dynamics between Ren and Ben Solo is just great, and playing to that throughout the special was fun. Yes, I definitely love seeing Ben Solo as a Ben Solo fan, and kind of seeing that from a different perspective.
Is The Lost Boy also your favorite, or would you say that another one of the 2 tales is your favorite?
I really love that one, and I think it's definitely awesome. But I think I was really drawn to the Wookiee's Paw, because to me, like, it kind of felt like a version of like Star Wars What If, right? It's like, what if Luke had every one of his wishes granted? Like, what would that look like? What if? And I've been really enjoying Marvel's What If. I've actually been really pleasantly surprised by it. And to me, this felt in that same spirit, and seeing all the things that kind of cascade from each and every one of Luke's wishes, and like how it gets progressively worse for maybe some surrounding characters, but like better for Luke, because obviously he's getting what he wants. I don't want to get too much into that without giving anything away. It's lovely, and you could probably like glean some things from the trailer, whatnot. But it was a lot of fun, and it was very kind of like Twilight Zone-y. Even like every tale has like a title card right before it, kind of in the spirit of Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, which always does like a 3-part Halloween special every year. So this is kind of the same thing, and even like the title card for Wookiee's Paw was like the Twilight Zone font. So that was very on purpose, right? And I love that kind of. I love how this thing kind of connected to a lot of different Halloween pop culture things, and used that, right? Like even in the trailer, we saw the battle droid like with the Shining reference, like here's B15265-4, and so that was a great moment too.
That was excellent. And I don't want to spoil the entirety of the battle droids' involvement, but they're, as they always are, just comedy kings. Never underestimate a battle droid. But you mentioned that, we have these Halloween pop culture references, but if you are a person who really enjoys scary movies and, classic horror as well as modern horror films, you're going to find a lot of Easter eggs and small things to love in this special. And I think that's what makes it fun for all ages. You really don't have to recognize all of those references to love the special, but when you do, you can kind of point at the screen in a very Leonardo DiCaprio meme way and enjoy those moments on a different level than a child might who hasn't seen the movie yet. So this is definitely one that adults can watch with children, and anybody of any age can enjoy. And again, that's what makes it so much fun. You know, it's a family event. It is something that everybody can enjoy. And I think that's something that everybody, all kinds of fans who enjoy different parts of the saga, can find something that they really love from it.
Yeah, that was a part of it that I've liked for both specials, is like kind of showing all different eras of Star Wars. Like last year we had the 3 Obi-Wans going like, hello there, you know, all each other.
Yes.
So like,
yes,
I love how the Lego specials are doing that and like pulling from each era, because this is the place to do it, right? It's like, let's just really think outside the box here and like make Star Wars weird and fun. And it totally does that. So
one other thing that I think is totally worth mentioning is the character of Dean. He is a new character. He's a young kid who is, a real go-getter and who works for Gabala as his mechanic. And we kind of find him, or Poe finds him once he enters Vader's castle, and they have this mentorship kind of relationship. And then we also see Dean kind of playing this larger role in the story than perhaps even Poe at some points, in terms of what's happening with Vinay and all that good stuff in the castle. And so the character of Dean was, for me, so refreshing and enjoyable. And I'm so glad that we got to experience this story with a kid character at the forefront.
Yeah, it's definitely an easy way for any younger viewers to insert themselves into the story through Dean. We're kind of all Dean in a way, right? Like, how would you feel being alongside Poe Dameron? Like, oh, this is the guy that just won the Battle of Exegol, like with the rest of the Resistance, right? And so you look up to him. Yeah, you look up to him because he's a war hero. He saved the day along with everybody else. So there's that hero fascination that Dean has, and it's interesting to see like how that plays off of all the different ways that these characters have to face their fears throughout the special. And like, what does it mean to face fear, and how do you get past that? Especially when there's the threat of evil rising. And that's kind of at the heart of the story, is how do you stop that evil, and how do you face your fears? Dean being a kid character is the perfect way to like view Star Wars through that lens, you know, through the lens of a child.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of hinted at it here, is that there's a really strong message throughout this special as well. And there's a great line, and I won't say the line, but if you listen to the interview, the Roundtable interview, it is said there. So forewarning. But there is this whole conversation about fear and courage. And I found it to be really a lovely message for this special. And I was glad that it all came to a moral that we could take away.
Absolutely, Sarah. Well, I think we've said what we can about the special, and I'm just really excited to turn it over to the interview portion. So once again, this was a roundtable interview with writer David Shayne and director Ken Cunningham. Some of the other outlets that were included are Fangirls Going Rogue, FANTHA Tracks, Full of Sith, Jedi News, Rebel Scum, and Skywalking Network.
So this interview might sound just a little different than a traditional interview you might hear from us, because we are today playing all the roles of the interview hosts. Lucasfilm asked us to not include the audio of the other podcasters and writers, but instead they allowed us to dub over it. So we will be asking their questions as close to exactly what they said as possible, in order to capture the full character of their question and not to misconstrue what they're saying. So you'll hear us as everybody else. And if you'd like to go hear their voices, I bet it's on their podcast feed as well. So without further ado, on to our roundtable interview.
Sandra from Fangirls Going Rogue asked, my first question is about the Ren. He debuted in the Kylo Ren comic series by Charles and Will. So my question for you is, how did the process of bringing a comic character into the film go, and will he show up again in the future?
I can't speak to the latter. To the former, you're right. Yeah, he appeared in the comics, and what we knew when we were putting the special together is we wanted to tell 3 kind of mini stories, one each from each of the different eras, and Ben Solo and as Kylo, and sort of that journey for him. It was a story we want to tell, and we realized, well, Ren was the natural, and so you're absolutely right. Like, it was fun to sort of take that from the comics and transfer it to screen, and then we were doing this kind of 80s style little featurette there. So yeah, Christian Slater's the one to go. I mean, he was our first choice, and we got him, and we were just thrilled. So it was incredibly fun to bring that to life.
Yeah, and then we leaned into that visually too. Like, so we gave him the mullet and the, like, luckily that existed in Lego canon. We didn't make that up. That's an official hairpiece.
So Mark from FANTHA Track asked, given their amazing skills, when you're designing the sets, essentially the digital sets that are being built for these Lego creations, are actual Lego designers ever involved in that? Because obviously there's a parity between the models and the CG world. Is any of that brought together in any way?
I mean, obviously we're utilizing some of the actual sets. So we're, bringing that in, placing it in world, and then my design team takes that and sort of builds around it. We try and it's like a 70-30 rule in terms of like organic versus Lego in terms of the way we design the set, although, the organic part isn't really organic either, but just, non-Lego pieces is kind of like an ethos we try and bring to the picture. And, obviously with a lot of the stuff then goes back to Denmark, and we get feedback from that team in terms of anything that, is very Lego specific, and just to make sure that everything is kosher.
Up next is Sarah.
Star Wars is something that has been around for over 40 years, and with that comes its own mythology and sensibilities. How do you go about balancing the trademark zany humor of the Lego brand with the spooky elements of Halloween, all within that Star Wars sensibility, both from the writing to the direction and visual style?
Oh, that's a great question, Sarah. It's sort of, the Lego Star Wars brand has been around, I want to say off the top of my head, around 20 years. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants, going all the way to back when people introduced the video games, and certainly the previous specials. So by this point, a lot of that groundwork has been laid out for us, which is really fun. I always say that Lego Star Wars is canon adjacent. So we're trying to honor canon. We're using real characters from canon. If we try to respect the timeline, all that, and then obviously take it to a silly and fun, whimsical Lego place. And so that becomes a leap off. The interesting thing for us is that with Halloween, we got to push that even a little further. I think we got to go even a little sillier and a little weirder because it's Halloween. And you can sort of do these Simpson-style treehouse of horror stories. So those 3 mini stories within the special let us even push a little bit further and go to kind of some really bizarre, but hopefully funny places. And then, so we do all that in the script, and then we record it, and then we hand it off to Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I really approach this stuff like I'm in an actual, like I'm shooting a real film in a Lego world. Like that to me informs a lot of the choices I make. And then, like David said on this one, like we're just looking at all these horror films and how to bring that stuff in, and then trying to find the line of like how scary you go, because, obviously our demo is not a typical horror demo, but I mean, the comedy and the Lego itself, like actually lets us push maybe a little further than you could normally, just because the humor of using Lego undercuts it. And then, yeah, visually, like the big one for me was Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like that film is extremely theatrical in the way it uses lighting. And so, I sort of brought that to my art director and was like, dude, this is what I want to do. And, so then we sort of, that springboarded us into this place where we used color as a storytelling tool.
Holly from Full of Sith asked, 1, thanks for any time anyone wants to honor Todd Browning. I'm going to be really happy. Also for giving me the headcanon that the Knights of Ren are vampires. But my actual question, we have seen Vinay before in Rogue One for seconds, and then in the Star Wars Adventure series. At what point did you realize he was the right character to set up the framework for a Halloween special?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, it's funny because use the right word, which is framework. Is we knew we were sort of actually starting from this place of wanting to tell these mini stories, and how do we surround that with a story that anchors all of that? If those are little stories we're telling around the campfire or in the haunted house, what's the haunted house we go through? And sort of that went to Vader's castle, and once we went there, we realized, oh, Vinay, it's perfect. As you've had exactly right. We've seen him in Rogue One, and we've seen him in the comics, and to my knowledge, this is the first time we've gotten to hear him speak on screen. So we realized, oh, and he's kind of nutty, so he can be telling these weird off-kilter stories that let us, as I was saying earlier, sort of push that humor a little further. And then we just got really lucky with casting and got Tony Hale, who just, as you guys heard, crushed it. And just his recording helped inform the character and actually even pushed it further. And then we sort of realized, all right, we got to keep pushing this character, and we can just go really nutty because Tony could kind of do anything. And it just came out. We were thrilled. So I'm glad you picked up on that, enjoyed it. And then, well, Ken, will you tell them like the visual side of Tony too?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like, it was just like so great in the record. Like, he is extremely mobile and expressive when he's recording. So he'd be like leaning into things and doing all these wacky things with his body. So I was like, oh, we absolutely have to use that. Like, I mean, again, the minifigs aren't that mobile. Like, there's a certain rule set we have to adhere to in terms of like how far we can break the figure in terms of the mobility. But like, we tried to push them as far as we could towards what Tony did in the records.
James from JEDI News asks, I'm a great proponent for dad jokes. There's really something in this for absolutely every age group. How do you make sure that there is something for every age group? And more dad jokes, please.
Man, James, you're speaking my language. I've been doing dad jokes long before I was a dad. So, you know, it's in part, I mean, that's the fun thing about Lego Star Wars is they really are. I mean, I know it's a bit of a cliche word, but they are family and you're trying to include everybody. So there really is something you're hoping all ages and everybody will enjoy. I'm hoping parents and kids will be watching this together. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be horror movie references that the parents may get that the kids don't. And so as long as, you know, if I get to do more of these, there'll be more dad jokes. So fingers crossed.
Michael from Rebel Scum asked, how do you figure out which horror stories to go with? Was there a big old whiteboard? Which ones you can make goofy in Lego form?
It's a great question. It's a virtual, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it was a virtual whiteboard. So what we knew is that pretty early on, we really wanted to represent all three eras. So we wanted to do the prequels and the classic trilogy and the sequel trilogy. And we wanted to try to showcase and highlight the villains. So we knew we would be able to get Vader through the castle, but so we want, and that he would be in the classic story. So it was pulling those villains. So you sort of started from there. The Wookiee's Paw story, for whatever reason, was the first one that came to me. Like, and maybe it's because that one has sort of, that one is as close as we have to sort of spoofing an existing story. And it's really taking that tale and putting the Star Wars lens on it. And then you just start kind of piecing things together and working backwards. And you go, okay, what sort of story could we tell with Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren? Well, all right, that's starting to feel like an 80s horror film. What does that look like? So you sort of work through that. There's no magical formula. You just ask a lot of what ifs and questions, and it's what's really fun is just there's an enormous number of people who are involved, all of whom are creative, and excited to be doing this. And so it just becomes bouncing ideas back and forth. And then that just continues right on, you know, once we're done with the script and Ken's team gets their hands on it, it's just where else can we keep doing that?
Melissa from the SKYWALKING Network asked, you mentioned, David, just now, the what if, asking yourself what if. That's what I really keyed into, was that this is a lot of fun for Star Wars fans, and that there's a lot of Easter eggs and little moments happening here that we don't necessarily get in the films. And I'm curious what each of your favorites is. Some wrong you were writing, something you've been thinking about for 30 or 40 years and wanted to see on screen. For me, it was Leia as an X-Wing pilot.
So it's funny. Like, it was really fun to get to see her do that. And once we realized, okay, we're playing Luke as a bad guy. Ooh, we can make Leia a good guy, and we get to keep Obi-Wan alive, and she gets to lead the battalion, and like that felt really good. I won't count this as righting a wrong, but and I will give full credit to our voice director, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. But in that same Wookiee's Paw story, I'd written this thing, and Ken had animated this fabulous sequence where it's Luke running around with Vader on his back like Yoda. They're training, and then somewhere I was like, oh yeah, well, let's definitely do, you know, the swing. And we're in the recording studio, and Mary, just who's a brilliant director but is also really funny, she goes, oh, what if Vader plants a kiss on Luke and goes for luck? And we're like, yes, do that. And it's like my which I can't take any credit for. It's all Mary. Again, it's not righting or wrong, but that moment I was just like, oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Ken, what about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's my favorite too. Like, I think I think everybody is just like, oh my God, Mary, like, oh, thank you.
Teresa from Fangirls Going Rogue asked, my questions, I guess, are for both of you. David, I know you wrote some episodes for LEGO Freemaker Adventures, which I absolutely love. There felt like a nod to the Freemaker Adventures in there. The character of Dean immediately, I was like, who was he? Who does he belong to? I was wondering if that was intentional. Also, was there an intentional reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Because I totally felt it with Grievous and Maul. What about those two things?
Oh, that's the big Freemaker connection in there obviously is Graballa. And he's such a funny character, and he was really funny on Freemaker, and Dana Snyder, who plays him, is hilarious. So that that is sort of the most direct Freemaker connection. I do see your parallels with Dean. There was just sort of a logical connection. I wouldn't say that was particularly on purpose, but look, any chance you get to have a connection to Frey, I loved working on Freemaker. If you look at the end credits, we were really lucky to get Bill Motz and Bob Roth in for our punch-up session. I was like, guys, who I got to meet them through that, and we're still friends. I was like, please come do this. Like, Graballa's there. I just want to make sure we're honoring the voice in this world you created. Monty Python, if we got that, what's the moment? I don't know, Ken.
It's when he's cutting him apart and he's like, you don't have any legs. And he basically has no arms and no legs. And I'm like, that's total Black Knight.
Yeah, that one wasn't totally intentional. I mean, I remember thinking that, but we didn't lean into it. We did have another one that ended up kind of getting cut though. Like when he gets pushed off the balcony by the Emperor and he falls, and in my board and the kind of the first couple of iterations of the animatic, we kept cutting back and forth. Like, so it's the knight running across the plane gag. But we had to lose it for a time because we had to, you have to cut stuff.
Mark from Fantha Track asks, the Vader's castle concept. It's become a bit of a staple over the past few years in Star Wars, especially at this time of year, obviously. As a concept, do you think there's more legs in it than just doing occasional things, specials in the IDW with comics? Do you think that there's something more substantial you can do with it? Certainly in terms of LEGO Star Wars.
Well, yeah, no, I think it has huge potential. Myself, David?
It was certainly fun to get to dive in there and explore. And I know there's a VR game, and obviously they've used it in the comics. So let's hope they do more. I have to say, it's like a place to play creatively. It was a no-brainer as a haunted house, and it was incredibly fun to get to explore in both the literal and creative sense.
Here's Brad's question.
Hi guys, thank you so much for being here today. I want to ask about the character of Dean and what inspired him, because he's so pivotal to the story and he's such a fun character, but especially because he has such a close relationship with Poe. So what inspired that character, and did you also pull from any other mentor-mentee relationships in Star Wars, especially coming off a sequel trilogy where Poe and Leia have that kind of mentorship, and now he's passing on that baton to like a next generation?
Yeah, I think you really got that right. Dean sort of came about in part, often particularly in Lego, but it's nice, and in Star Wars, it's nice to have a kid's point of entry. So he was a really good character to have, and it was fun to let to sort of contrast him with Poe, who is sort of all swagger and confidence, and watch Poe kind of learn, like, okay, you don't always have to be the coolest guy in the room, and that's okay to be being vulnerable is okay. And Dean learning through Poe that also, even the person you think is always brave and is never scared, they get scared too, and that's okay. And so, yeah, I do think some of that does come from Poe growing as a leader, which was a journey we got to see, as you put it really well, in the sequel trilogy. So there was a lot of that. And so it was really fun, and it was fun watching Jake and Raphael. Actually, we got to have them. All these records were done over Zoom. It was done during the pandemic, and it was just, we actually did get to have them virtually working off each other a little bit, and they had like insta chemistry. I mean, I thought, Ken,
no, it was great.
Yeah, it was very sweet. Their relationship was really very sweet. Like, it was fun to watch them do that.
Bryan from Full of Sith asked, one of the things I really wanted to ask about was, if nothing else, to tee you up to talk about Graballa the Hutt. He's one of the funniest characters that's been in Star Wars in a long time, and I was wondering if you could talk about really the decision-making process behind bringing him into this particular special, but also what it was like working with a character you talked about talking to the Freemaker creators about, punching him up there. But also, when I talked to them, they said that Dana brings a lot of that himself. So I'm just wondering, just talk to me about Graballa.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch on that one, Bryan. It is absolutely true. Is that you write lines for Dana, and he does those lines, and then he also improvises such hilarious lines. And the real difficulty working with Dana is that it's an embarrassment of riches, and you could practically do a Graballa special. So you start going, oh my gosh, what is essential? What do we keep and what do we have to cut? So it came about in part as we, I can't remember where we originally had once we knew we were doing Vader's Castle. In one of our creative meetings with me and the folks at Lucasfilm and Lego, we said, oh, well, what if, like, someone just said, like, what if we brought Graballa back, and hey, he's kind of this slimy businessman. What if he tried to turn it into a luxury hotel, which we also saw him, he had his beachside resort in Freemaker. So it just felt like a natural place to sort of take Graballa. Bill and Bob said to me, they're like, yes, Dana's great, and he will be funny all on his own, and it's absolutely true. And he's so game. And it was as much just ensuring sort of at the script stage that, like, I just want to make sure, like, let's make sure we have the lines that Dana will then take and Dana all over them in the best possible way. So yeah.
James from Jedi News asks, you put so much of yourself into this, and it really, really shows. In terms of all the different Lego sets that you created, is there any that you would like to see become real physical Lego sets? And if not, why not?
Ken.
Well, I mean, there's, like, Vader's Castle exists, but I would love to see, like, the broader Mustafar. That would be awesome. And yeah, like, kind of everything, really. Like I can't even make a choice on that. Like, and there's nothing I wouldn't want to see, David.
Well, now that you say it, James, that occurred to me. And Ken, I feel like we have to put in a call and beg Jason Kostler. I really would love to see Wookiee's paw, Luke and Vader, and Leia flying her X-wing, and Obi-Wan in Red 5. Like, I would love to do Bizarro Lego.
Yeah. I mean,
guys, make it happen. Y'all are the ones to make it happen, please.
Yeah, it'd be super cool to do, like, the Luke and Vader swinging across the chasm as a set.
Yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Michael from Rebel Scum asked, did you have a favorite part about working on this? Because my favorite part was the battle droid going after Graballa and putting his head in the door like The Shining.
Yeah,
David, you want to go first?
It was. I mean, something you hit on, Michael, which is right. It's like, it was so fun to go, ooh, what little Easter egg, what little spoof can we do? What can we pay homage to? What can we reference, and sort of, but organically, and not just have it be there for a reference, but be something funny and that felt good in the story. So that was incredibly fun to do. I mean, I'll admit, I think I said at one point, the Wookiee's Paw story kind of came to me very early on, and I loved living in that world. It was very fun to get to do, and that was the one that just for me was in an incredibly creatively satisfying project that may have been the most creatively satisfying. But I mean, truthfully, it was a joy from start to finish. I love getting to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think from, like, a storytelling standpoint or a story standpoint, my favorite was Wookiee's Paw. But from a fun, like, directing, making something standpoint, for me, Lost Boys, like, just especially the whole dream sequence montage, like, that was so much fun. Like, and we just, like, there's so many references that get packed in there that were started in the script, but then visually, stuff we added in as we were going along. And you've got, like, Village of the Damned, you've got Lost Boys, you've got Nightmare on Elm Street, and there was just so much, some Twilight Zone stuff, like, with him falling into Ren's head. Yeah, it was just, like, so much fun.
I will also say, Ken reminded me in the Lost Boys sequence, when Michael Kramer, our composer, turned in the soundtrack. And he was like, hey guys, I'm worried it's too much synthesizer. And everybody well here was like, no, we'd like more synthesizer. Just keep pushing it. And he was so game. And I remember as we were doing all the way through for every layout, and even when we got to the sound mix, in Star Wars, the clue horn, the shirtless Bith who's playing the clue horn on the beach. It was just like, more clue horn, louder clue, just keep pushing that clue horn. And that was incredibly fun. That was a highlight for me for sure.
I mean, but like the problem with the Lego minifigs is they're just flat, and decal. And I really would have loved to grease that guy up like the guy in Lost Boys. but it just visually, it visually wouldn't work. But I had a fantasy that somehow we could do that.
Melissa from the Skywalking Network asks, these are amazing, great insights. I want to get kind of serious, I guess. I'm curious if how much workshopping was done about the line, without fear, you can't have courage, that sort of mantra at the end. Because I do think that there's something really important, seeing Poe's sort of emotional health and dealing with this and interacting with Dean. I'm just curious as to how much workshopping went into that line at the end and what it means as a sort of way to wrap up the episode.
Wow. Well, Melissa, it's so funny. Funny is the wrong word. You recognize the heart in that, frankly. And we were a couple of drafts into the script, and we knew like Poe was going to have this moment where he kind of revealed like it's okay to be scared. And we had words to that effect, but it wasn't quite hitting. And again, this was all done during the pandemic and with everything that was going on. And I think we were all feeling scared. The world still feels scary, frankly, but felt very scary. And my wife, and I've asked her, I don't know if she heard this somewhere else, but just at dinner one night said, without fear, we were talking to our kids, said, without fear, you can't have courage. And I was like, and I did that kind of nerdy writer thing where I sort of was like, oh, hold on. And I like ran downstairs and emailed the gang. I was like, I think we found it. And like, so I'm very touched that you tapped into that, because that really resonated for me. And it's a lesson I'm relearning all the time. It's certainly something I want my kids to understand, that, it is okay to be scared. We are all scared. It is what we do in the face of fear. And so it was really nice to have Poe, our coolest, most swaggery character, acknowledge that and pass that lesson on to Dean, and to see Dean use that in the end.
Sandra from Fangirls Going Rogue asked, so me and Teresa were going back and forth on a cool question to ask. I like the fun questions, so I'm going to ask you, this is like my signature question. Take off your Lucasfilm hat, this creative hat, and just share with us which one of these characters is your favorite. Also, I know you both worked on the Christmas special as well. If you had a choice between the two, which one is your favorite?
David, I'm going to make you go on the tough one first.
No, okay. The second one first. It's a little bit like asking me which my favorite child is. They know. No. The truth is, I love getting to work on both of them equally. They are very different experiences. We really try to lean into the tropes of the holidays for each of them. So, I do think maybe, Ken, you feel this way sometimes when you're working on a project. Whatever you either half the time you get nostalgic about the thing you worked on, and the other half you're like you've seen that thing so many times, and the other thing is new and that becomes shining. So it goes back and forth. So it really would depend on when you ask me. The honest answer is I do love them both. Gosh, in terms of character, I want to hang out in this one. I found Dean really fun. He was just a great kid. Our actor Raphael brought an enormous amount of life to him, and just really imbued him with a lot of heart. And I would hang out with that kid. I like hanging out with my kids. He'd be fun to have along too. What about you, Ken?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same thing for me. Like, I mean, you're always like kind of enthralled with the thing that you're working on. But then when you are having trouble and struggling with problems in it, you start to, you sort of like the whole nostalgia thing with previous. So like, yeah, I mean, for me, like the first one was, it was the first time I got to play in the Star Wars universe. So that was a big one for me. I mean, I was of the generation, like I was 10 when Star Wars came out. I was that generation of kids. I saw it 20 times in the theater. Like for me, it's been a lifelong thing, right? So that there was there's a thing about the first one for me that's attached to that, but I really love the new one. In terms of characters, like hangout or just favorite character, a little of both. I mean, in all honesty, like I love the gonk droid. I'm always looking for opportunities to stick the gonk droid in the background, and like I just like, yeah, he's kind of like my go-to. Like, oh yeah, let's stick a gonk droid in there. And I'd imagine he'd have some interesting things to say.
Well, like what would he have to say? Maybe gonk or gonk? Maybe gonk.
Gonk.
Mark from FANTHA Tracks asks, I managed to watch a couple of episodes of A Galaxy of Sound earlier, which not only showed you how brilliant the sound work was on those films, but it makes you realize how essential John Williams' score was to the saga and Mando and everything else. Obviously, Ludwig does Mando. The music in this is fantastic. How much does that sort of firm up an episode once you've scored it? How much of a difference does that make?
It's big. Like, I mean, we like right from the beginning, we temp stuff into the edit, like just so, myself and the exec producers can kind of see how something's playing. Like when you strip the music off, it actually becomes hard to parse, like how it really brings a lot to the scene. And then Michael Kramer, our composer, like we get access to a limited number of Williams cues, which we use, but he really like threads the needle in terms of like writing around that stuff and like twisting it, which really became key in the Halloween special. Like just, him being able to take kind of a classic Williams thing and then twist it a little bit so that it, plays like dissonantly. He just brought so many smart, interesting ways to kind of thread that musical needle. Just super invaluable.
Yeah, the other thing Michael's just an incredibly talented composer. The other thing he brings to the table is he's able to do action in the action sequences and big epic scores when you need an epic moment. And but he also knows comedy really well. He knows where to go dry in music and let the joke stand. He knows where a little sting is going to add 5% or 10% to that really funny physical moment that Ken's team has animated. He's just got really, really good instincts for it. But to your original question, Mark, it brings everything. I mean, it just adds. Whenever you hear it without score, without temp music, to Ken's point, you're like, oh no, and then the music comes like, oh no, this totally works. And it's funny you say. I remember a million years ago watching a profile of John Williams, and they showed this scene in Empire on Bespin where Han, it's the I love you, I know moment, and they show it once dry with just the sound effects, and you're like, and then they put in the music, and I think, don't we all bow down to John Williams? I mean, it's enormous.
Next up is Sarah's question.
All right. What was it like to return to the Lego Star Wars world after having worked on the Lego Holiday Special last year? And did you learn anything in that particular process that allowed you to have an even better process this go round?
I mean, David, do you want to go, or like, because I think there's sort of like maybe the writing side, and then I could speak to the kind of the production and bigger picture COVID production side.
Yeah. I mean, it was so thrilling to get asked back. The holiday special was just a dream project, and it was really, it was bringing the band back together. It was the entire same team from Lucasfilm and from Lego, and knowing we were working with Atomic again. I think what's really nice, it's just a bunch of Josh Rhimes and James Waugh and Leland Chee and Jason Kosser, and I'm going to end up leaving out names, so I'll stop. It's just an enormous amount of fun to get to work with all of them. And then when you do it again, you have a little bit of a shorthand. You just have a little bit of a creative shorthand. So something that you might have had to, either they would have had to explain to me, or I would have to try to explain my intent. Like, you just start to get it. You just get each other's rhythms. And it frankly makes it easier. And that ended up being really vital because, again, this started, I was looking back, I literally started pitching this, I think maybe a week after lockdown had started. So now knowing we're going to all be doing this from the air quote comfort of our own homes meant having that shorthand was vital. The time was short. It's a pretty fast production schedule. And then, so Ken, I'm curious, the production side, what'd you?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, like you said, like just, getting to be asked back was just, absolutely so great. Like, I don't know what I'll do after, we don't have this stuff to work on. Like, in terms of like the COVID thing, like we were in the middle of the holiday special, and like I think we had just entered layout, which is essentially when we go from boards into like 3D assets and start to put the camera together and block the shots out and stuff. So the team, like we all got sent home, and I essentially started directing like this. So that brought on a whole bunch of challenges. And so what was nice about Terrifying Tales is we'd kind of gone through that already, like, and now it's old hat. Like we worked through all the problems, communication issues, and how to keep a team motivated when they're by themselves at home, and just how to communicate everything that needs to have to get communicated and keep the ball rolling. So like by the time we went into Terrifying Tales, we'd worked all that stuff out, and now it's running extremely smoothly.
And for our final question here, Holly from Full of Sith asked, we have had super fun questions, but I want to ask you the hard-hitting query here, which is, what costume do you think Rabala would wear to a party?
Wow.
Gold LeMay.
Yes!
Yes!
I don't know what the costume would be, but it'd be Gold LeMay. David, what do you think?
Oh man. Oh, what costume would Rabala? I think Rabala is insecure enough that he might go as Jabba. What? I'm Jabba. It's good. My terrible Dana Snyder. Somebody apologize to Dana for me now. Maybe he would just go as Jabba. And they get annoyed.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to that Roundtable interview. We hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did, because it was a ton of fun to be invited to this. And thank you once again to Lucasfilm for including us. It's like our first time doing a group interview like that. So it's kind of nice to get that reminder that the Star Wars community is large and full of many different perspectives. So that was just kind of a joy to see in a virtual setting. Some of the positives of doing a lot of things over Zoom now is you get to interact with other folks that you might not normally.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if you want to hear more from us here at Friends of the Force, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can find Sarah and I personally on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Goodreads. Make sure wherever you're listening to the show to subscribe to the podcast so all of our new episodes drop right into your feed. And if you have a couple extra minutes in your day, please leave us a written review, because it helps other people find the show, which is always a good thing. And it lets us know what we're doing right here so we can continue doing it.
Yeah, so if you don't tell us what you're enjoying, we're just going to stop doing all your favorite things. I'm joking. But anyway, we also have a Patreon where you can get some extra content from us, including our review series on the comics. We're talking specifically about the High Republic comics right now, but also what we're coming across and reading, and our continuing novelization series where every couple of months we talk about a new novelization. Most of them we haven't read yet, so we've been having a great time doing that. But thanks so much to our patrons: Amy, Anna, Bryan, Cheryl, Deborah, Donnie, Elegy, Jesse, Jen, Knights of Ren, Huang, Levi, Lindsay, Lucy, Marie Claire, Neil, Rachel, Sarah, Saber Bouquet, Sky Talkers, Travis, T, and Zachary. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening and supporting the show. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.